$1 per day, yes, just $1 per day. There's no more excuses. Absolutely every single person watching this video can afford to do this experiment. $1 per day invested into the Schwab US Dividend Equity ETF, and a Dividend Growth ETF that not only offers a nice starting dividend yield, but also, at least historically, has paid more and more in dividends over time. In this video, we're going to go over exactly what an investor could expect long-term if they just invested consistently $1 US into SCHD every single day over several years. Now, one thing I can promise you for sure is these numbers are going to shock you. So stick around, drop a like down below, and let's get right into it. Real quick, for those that haven't already, make sure to go to the first link in my description and grab my new dividend investing ebook, where I share exactly how I went from $0 invested to now earning over $6,000 on a monthly basis and over $1 million invested in the market. Along with the ebook, you're also going to receive my custom dividend tracker, where you can track your dividend progress on an ongoing basis and reach your dividend investing goals. So make sure to grab yourself a copy of my dividend investing ebook and the new dividend tracker today. It's the first link in my description. So for this video's example, we are going to be showing you what $1 long term looks like invested into SCHD, and of course you yourself can run the same exact experiment with different dividend growth ETFs, different growth ETFs, or whatever stocks you want across the markets. Now, the reason we're doing this with SCHD is because, for one, SCHD is my favorite long-term buy and hold forever style dividend growth ETF that I currently have around 622 shares of. Now, SCHD is personally my favorite because I'm a huge fan of the objective of the ETF. I also love the fact that this ETF is super cheap to own. But on top of that, over the long term, SCHD has basically went up and up and up over time as far as ETF price. And not to mention, it pays a 3.5% starting yield that has only been going up and up and up over time. But to bring everything back for a second, for those of you that aren't that familiar with this ETF, let's go over some of the basics together. Like I said, yes, SCHD is extremely cheap to own. The total expense ratio is just 0.06%. Now, if you were to look at every ETF across the market, this is on the cheaper end that you're going to find across everything. I said earlier that I was a big fan of SCHD's objective, methodology, the gold ETF, which is to track as closely as possible before fees and expenses the total return of the Dow Jones US Dividend 100 Index. Now, I'm a big fan of this index methodology because of the fact that it's so hard for stocks to actually get within it. What I mean by that is once a year, there's a reconstitution where stocks are either going to enter or exit the index depending on various numbers of screenings. Also, it says right here on the website, the highlights are a straightforward low-cost fund offering potential tax efficiency, can serve as part of the core of a diversified portfolio, etc., etc. So now that we went over some of the basics of SCHD, before we go over the math of what $1 per day into this ETF looks like, looking into some of the top holdings for SCHD. As of right now, number one, the top holding is Texas Instrument at 4.68% of the total ETF. Then next we have Amgen, we have Pfizer, we have Lockheed Martin, Coca-Cola, Chevron, PepsiCo, Verizon, Cisco, and BlackRock. Now, all in all, there's around 100 different holdings in this ETF, so it is well diversified. But again, all these holdings have a few things in common. They all pay a decent starting dividend yield, but also have, at least historically, raised their dividends consistently over time. And speaking of dividends, this is going to be one of the main reasons on why this experiment can even take place in the first place. Why the numbers are actually going to turn so big off of just $1 per day is because of this exactly. SCHD has had significant dividend growth over time, certain years being over 10% per year. That means that whatever SCHD is paying you in dividend income today, you can at least expect, going off of historical numbers, that sometime in the future you are going to get paid more and more in dividends long term. Now, for a quick example of this, let's look at 3/17/2013, 10 years prior from 3/21/2023. So back then, SCHD was paying investors around 20 cents per share per quarter, and then around 10 years later, we're talking 60 cents per share per quarter. So whatever investors bought into SCHD back then, they're not only up significantly on the actual share price of the ETF, but they're also getting paid 3 times more in cash flow per quarter. Now, this is exactly the reason why on so many of my videos, I talk about dividend growth rates and how it really helped me in my investing journey. And I think that it's probably one of the most important metrics that especially newer dividend growth investors need to understand. So for those that don't, the dividend growth rate, or DGR, you're going to see this quite a bit, is the percentage growth rate of a company's dividend achieved during a certain period of time. Frequently, the dividend growth rate is calculated on an annual basis. However, if necessary, it can be calculated quarterly or monthly. So a really quick example of how a dividend growth rate works. Year number one, let's say a dividend was $1. So year number one, there's no dividend growth rate because it's the first year. Year number two, the dividend is now $1.05, which means the dividend growth rate is 5%. Year number three, 115, which means it's 9.52%, etc., etc. Now, of course, there's lots of different metrics in examining a stock or ETF and really figuring out if it's the right investment for you. But if you're a dividend growth investor, if you're an investor that wants to get paid dividends and more dividends over time, dividend growth rate is a very, very important one. Now, last but not least, we are going to be doing the unthinkable, something I don't think I've ever seen any other investor do. We're going to be looking at what just $1 per day on average, invested into something like SCHD, could turn into long-term for a dividend growth investor. And I want to make this video because there's lots of investors that say, yeah, I don't have $100 to invest per day, like some people. Maybe I don't even have 50, maybe I don't even have 10. But like I said at the beginning of the video, every single one of us can come up with $1 on average to invest into a high quality asset like SCHD or like something else. It doesn't matter, but the numbers are going to be bigger than you expect, and here's some proof. So if we were to build out a simulation for $1,000 of starting principal, a 3.5% initial annual dividend yield, which is pretty close to SCHD's, a $365 annual contribution, which again, keep in mind, if you have much more to invest than just $1, your portfolio is most likely going to grow a lot faster. But for this example, $1 per day in SCHD. The expected annual dividend amount increase 10%. It could be lower or higher. Certain years it was, but let's go with 10. Expected annual share price appreciation 3%, dividend tax rate 15%, distribution rate is going to be quarterly, and DRIP is going to be turned on. So all the dividends are going to be reinvested over time, $1 per day in SCHD. Let's see what happens after 30 years. So the first 8 years look like this. The first year, a $1,000 principal in SCHD would earn an investor around $35 in dividends per year. Nothing all that crazy, but after those dividends are reinvested, and after that $365, that $1 per day contribution comes in, by year number 2, the investor would already be at $54 per year in dividends. Skipping all the way through because none of us have all day, by year number 8, a $4,737 portfolio would already been built from a $1,000 start, and this is once again just from $1 per day in SCHD. Now this portfolio would earn around $268 per year in dividends. Again, nothing insane, but pretty impressive from just a $1 per day investment. Skipping down all the way through the years, it would take an investor around 14 years in theory if they started with the $1,000 and invested just $1 per day into SCHD to reach $10,500 in principal and almost $900 per year in dividends. I get it, still not the largest portfolio. You're not going to be able to retire off this necessarily, but it still just shows the power of compound interest if you invest into a high quality asset that has the potential to not only grow, but pay dividends and pay more and more in dividends as the years go on. By year number 19, the portfolio surpasses $20,000 and now almost to $2,500 per year in dividends. Now skipping all the way through, all the way to the bottom, after this portfolio compounds and compounds and compounds, this portfolio would reach $162,000 from just $1,000 of starting and $1 per day in SCHD. Again, all these numbers are theoretical, it's all estimation, but still it just does show you the power of compound interest. Now, like I sort of said, if you wanted to add more annual contribution to your portfolio in a simulation like this, obviously the numbers are going to get a lot bigger, a lot faster. But it just does go to show not a relatively small amount of money, like I always say, a very, very small amount of money, $1, a single buck. Invest into SCHD every single day or a comparable ETF or stock that has similar metrics to offer could turn a $1,000 portfolio theoretically into over $150K in 30 years. But before I go, I want to ask you guys a question down below. As of right now, if you're currently building out a long-term dividend growth portfolio, which stock or ETF are you buying on a consistent basis, like I'm personally doing as of right now with SCHD, to build your dividend snowball long-term? Let me know in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to please drop a like on it and subscribe for more future content like this. Thanks as always for stopping by, and if you are interested in investing, make sure to check out these recent videos I posted right here.